Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I have a suspicion that most people who are following comics today, most people that are putting in the effort and the engagement to read comics, decide for themselves what they like, what they don't like, can I have an opinion, and everything else. I suspect that I think there's this large group that feels like they don't have a country to some extent. I think this group does not identify with the endless cheerleading kind of you must like it behavior on the pro comic side and there is a lot of that, and it is very frustrating. I'll give you a few examples kind of as we go through this thing. But one of the things that happened is the She-Hulk trailer dropped, and the trailer sorry, the not looks sounds, meaning the dialogue and everything else sounds inherently okay. It sounds it had the right balance of Jennifer Walters. One of the lines, in the thing, Jennifer Walters' character is being kind of tortured by Bruce Banner in order to get the Hulk part to come out, and he talks about you need a mix of fear and anger. She's like, fear and anger is like the woman's default state, and some people are complaining about that. We'll get to that in a minute. But that actually is a line from She-Hulk, the comic. It's actually one of the more, in terms of the dialogue, feels. I'm sure you can't judge this from just a trailer, but it feels authentic. It's okay. The dialogue and everything else is fine. What isn't fine is the CGI looks atrocious. Like the She-Hulk looks terrible. Like I'm watching, I'm like, this can't be finished, right? Like they're gonna do they're doing more work on this. They have to. I showed it to Mrs. Perch, and she's like, she looks like Shrek. And she meant that from the standpoint of not she looks manly, but like she looks like animation from the 90s, or whenever Shrek came out. 2000, I don't know. When was that Smash Mouth? When was All Star popular? Never. Okay, that doesn't help. Anyway, it looks like that level of animation. It looks terrible. And I go I go online and like, are other people talking about this? And some people are. But then there's this counter argument group. And the counter argument group is this, what I would call, I can't call them pro comics, because what they're for is not comics. They're for just, you can't say anything bad about comics. That's somehow a position. And they're going, you're just angry because it's a woman. This is the best CGI that Marvel has ever done. Ever done. The best CGI. In a world where we've got a fairly realistic talking raccoon and a tree and space worlds and everything else, She-Hulk is the best CGI. Now that's obviously bullshit by any estimation. So why would you say that? Why would you go to that? But anyway, that's one group, and I think a lot of people who read, enjoy, and I mean actually read the comics, not just try and get social points on Twitter. I think that they certainly don't feel attached to that group. That group just seems bizarre, doesn't feel like they're reading the comics. At times when you point out things that they say that are inaccurate, that group will quickly turn around going, you're trying to gatekeep me. And it's like fact checking, just basically correcting someone's mistake is gatekeeping. Like that group, it's annoying. It's straight up, it's an annoying group. And quite frankly, I think that group's responsible for a lot of why we have issues in comics today, because we've basically taught some creators, not all, but some, that that rather than face any criticism, you can just rely on this group to kind of see you through the day. And this group is nuts. I think, again, if you look at the litmus test for me, if you look at that She-Hulk trailer and you come away with it going, the CGI for She-Hulk is better than anything Marvel has done in the past, you're high. Flat, straight up. But the other loud group is a group that is the comics are dying, comics are pamphlets, comics are about to be destroyed. There's no, everything is awful. There's absolutely nothing being published, and that group is equally foreign to people who are reading and kind of loving a lot of comics. They don't know what to. That group is, it's fueled and built by outrage and anger over the culture war in comics, and so you don't really know how to attach to that either. And you saw some of this play out, and I'm disappointed to say this. I've said this in the past, and people have certainly given me shit about it. But I read when there's a personality or a figure that comes up that is I don't know, people are getting a lot of controversy. I like to say I'm going to go see what this person says for myself. I'm curious. I don't want to learn about what's going on via CNN or MSNBC or Fox. I would prefer to actually understand why this person's controversial. So this is a case of Jordan Peterson some time ago, and I'm like, okay, let's read this book. And I remember going into a shop in the Pacific Northwest in the Seattle area and buying the 10 Rules for Life or whatever it is, 10 something or others from Peterson. And I remember this is one of the times when I felt uncomfortable buying this book because the person who was ringing me up clearly did not like Peterson and definitely viewed me like I was confirming all the fears that I was a hateful white supremacist by buying that book. But I've heard a lot about. I'm like, okay, I'm going to plop down the money and I'm going to see what this is going on here. And people say like you should have stolen that book if you want to say no, I'm not going to break the law of it. But anyway, reading the book was a lot of what I would call common sense, benign, in many cases, dad advice. Like, hey, clean your room. Clean your room is good advice. Meaning, if you tidy up your world, things get better. So I don't have the huge negative feeling. Now, I've not followed all the trials and tribulations of Peterson as he's talking about the trans community, everything else. But it is. I don't have this gut. This is a lunatic person, and I certainly was opposed when Ta-Nehisi Coates did the, Jordan Peterson is the Red Skull bit in Captain America. I thought that was stupid on a number of different fronts. Again, not necessarily because I loved Peterson, but because that's not what I mean. Why are you doing that to Red Skull? I guess is the point. To make him a three-dimensional character, don't use him as an axe to grind against your enemies. So anyway, this is kind of again why this crossover to comics. I have no idea, but Sports Illustrated publishes their swimsuit issue, and they like announcing 4 covers. And I guess I missed the point where Sports Illustrated would do a reveal of the 4 covers. I kind of assume they just they're like, we need to get the sales up 1 issue a year. People get tired of talking about sports. We need to put some girls in some bikinis, and it's a good trick because it gives guys a legitimate reason to stare at girls in bikinis because they can say, no, honey, I'm reading Sports Illustrated. It's my sports magazine. Whereas if they're sitting there with a Playboy, there'd be questions. But I guess the old Playboy. But my first comment when I saw this reveal was, man, that's right. Sports Illustrated must still produce magazines. I had no idea. I mean, that feels like a really inefficient way to get your sports news these days, but all right. But one of the covers was from a larger model who's in a bikini and she's, heavier. And I was very amused by the reactions to this cover. The reactions were, I would say, about half, oh my God, this fat uggo, no, woke. This thing has gone woke. Too fat, no. And the other half, and this was the more confusing half to me, was I am so horny. I have never been more horny. This is the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. I am gay. I've been gay for 30 years, but I am more horny than I've ever been looking at that cover in my entire life. And you read that and you're like, okay, well, clearly that this is not true. And that's not denying some people find the girl attractive. I'm sure they do, but it was this. It was the most horny, rabid response you've ever seen, and that was just absurd. And it's not, again, people don't feel that way, but they're trying to, it's this weird performance that goes on. So Jordan Peterson weighs into this and goes, and again, I'm sitting there going, I'm neither of those. I'm not super horny. This body type does not appeal to me, but whatever. I mean, again, you're still publishing magazines? That's my take. That's like, wow. Okay. So Peterson weighs in and basically says, she's too fat. This is woke, more or less. I'm paraphrasing. This is the problem with the society. You're pushing this on. There's a beauty ideal, but it's not. And he's in there. Which, if you're posting like something like that on Twitter, you are 100% going to get people taking a run at you. Again, Exhibit A are the people over the top talking about how hard their dicks are because they've never seen a more beautiful woman in their life. So people are going to come back on that, and certainly people did. And this is the wide array of people then responding to Peterson of like, I bet you have a tiny dick. You're a loser. Somehow you're a white supremacist. I guess she was not white, or maybe she's just very tanned. I don't know. But it was all those things: bigot, sexist, misandrist. I mean, just the full. I think they called him a misandrist, which is to me not understanding what that word means. If you're, I don't think that word applies to that situation. But okay. Anyway, and Peterson came out like a day later, going, "I'm being attacked." Again, I'm paraphrasing, but it was like, there's too much attacks in here. And I was disappointed to see that because, again, I thought his book was filled with relatively common sense advice. You had to know if you're going to wade into this, people are going to come at you. If you're now saying, "Oh my God, people came at me," it's like that old meme. And there's a cartoon picture of somebody like shoveling, unpopular opinions over a wall, and then a bunch of response comes back, and the person's like, "Help! I'm being attacked." It's like you can't throw up the victim card if you're shoveling out something that is going to be toxic and not toxic. That's the wrong word. That word also has meaning today, but just something that's going to be clearly unpopular with a big segment of the audience. And this isn't me, just by the way, saying you have to shut up and not say those comments, but you can't express surprise. That's the part. You can say, I mean, like, look, when people come and they attack this show, and they do plenty, and they attack it as, "Oh, you're too, you don't talk about the woke agenda enough." When I say, "Hey, vote with your wallet," I know those people are going to come out of the woodwork bitching. Likewise, I know that if I mention Richard Meyer's name, I'm going to get, and every effing time I'm going to get mail. You shouldn't mention his name on the show. When you mention his name on the show, people are going to think you're attached to that. Every time, 100% of the time. Consequently, if I say something that disagrees with Meyer, then I get another host of mail. It's like, you shouldn't ever, your boy Zach has a better take on this, and you are stupid. I mean, like, it's just it's exhausting. So my point in all this is, my theory is that the majority of you listening, the majority of people out there, really don't identify with either of these two groups. They're non-binary. No, I'm kidding. They just fundamentally they want comics. They want to be able to read something. They want basic human things. They want to be able to take a book. They want to put down money. They want to feel like they didn't completely waste their money. They don't want to feel like they're getting stolen from. They just kind of want to just read comics. This crazy idea. They're coming into comics. They want to read comics. They don't really want to have to over the top fawn over comics that are bad, comics that charge $4, $5, and are poor quality. And there are some, and they can see it with their own eyes. They're not stupid. At the same time, they do not want to constantly be on the search for woke. By the way, if somebody needs to explain this to me, there's a video way, way, way back. This is one of the earlier videos I ever did. And it's called "No, SheHulk is not a trans Hulk." That's the video. And what cracks me up is every time there is SheHulk news, 100% of the time, people come out of the woodwork to talk about that this, "Oh great, Marvel has made the Hulk trans." And I'm split of mind. Half of me believes these are just somebody doing a really stupid troll. And I do think I'm always confused by the individual who's like, they act really stupid, and they're like, "Look how stupid I'm acting." It's like, yep. See, you are successful. Congratulations. Yeah. And then half of me thinks, yeah, they're just stupid, because I know at least in a couple cases, there's somebody who did a full-throated, not deep-throated. This is an entirely different thing. A full-throated argument for why Marvel turning the Hulk trans is a bad thing, and they were deadly serious. And I had done this video, and it took 3 or 4 days, and the guy pulled the video down. Probably embarrassed, and they should be. Quite frankly, sorry. It's not like Marvel. It's not like that was a trick. that you really had to read carefully to realize it was a separate person. It's really obvious. In fact, a lot of the She-Hulk comics, particularly the ones by Byrne and even the ones by Slott, they would start by like She-Hulk talking to you, the reader, like, I'm Jennifer Walters, the cousin of the Hulk. It's like it doesn't get much more simple than that. I understand in Jason Aaron's Avengers, she was running around kind of as a monster creature with breasts, and that probably is what tricked some people. But like me with Peterson, like you owe it to yourself to try at least to understand what you're talking about before you start talking. I mean, just a little bit, even a tiny bit of research. I don't know. I think most people just want to read comics. And I think that if there's a bleed in comic customers, and there are, if you talk about one of the reasons, and by the way, I don't think this is the top reason. I don't think it's in the top three of reasons. When we talk one reason why people are heading to manga or are headed to manga is to some extent to escape this crap, to just be able to put down some money and read the book and not have to deal with this nonsense, to be able to say, I didn't like this chapter of One Piece, and not get people, bringing out torches. Now, to be clear, there are plenty of manga communities where you have that stuff going on. However, it is not as widespread, and it does not have the same level of vitriol and immediate response. I go to a number of discords and different places where they talk about One Piece, and people have said, I don't like this chapter, or, my favorite chapter was the Nukama storyline, and nobody comes in there and calls them, super woke, and nobody comes in and says, you're an SJW, and people don't come in and say, oh, you didn't like it, then get out because I felt it was the best chapter in the history. I mean, yes, it was a flashback of Chopper, how he became a doctor, that they've actually done for roughly 80 times in One Piece already. It was another one of those, but this was the best chapter in the history of all of One Piece, you dumbass. People are just like, oh, I liked it. It's a lot more benign. Yes, there are people, but it's a lot more benign. And that's one of the reasons why I think people are heading to manga, is that they just want to read and be entertained. They don't want to put up with this crap. And I think, you can't underestimate the exhaustion factor by a lot of customers who, they don't agree with all the criticism of comics. They don't believe that comics are dying tomorrow. They don't want to get into who's hired for what reason or what ethnicity or gender preference, what else. They don't really want to be distracted by that. They just want to read comics. But they also want to be able to like and dislike comics without somebody telling them, no, you have to like this. You have to. Danny Lore wrote this, and if you don't like this comic, if you don't like this one, you are a, hateful, bigot, racist, all the rest. They just want to read the comic. They want to point out hey, I think it's ridiculous storytelling that, Riri Williams shows up, and within 4 issues, she's running around as Iron Man, and it's a really annoying character. They want to be able to say that without people going, nope, she's the real Iron Man. This is my Iron Man, and you're, they don't want to deny reality. They want to be able to say, I like Wolverine. Like, oh, you mean Laura Kinney? It's like, no, I mean the Wolverine that's been around since the 70s. That Wolverine, the Wolverine that's had multiple movies. That Wolverine, not this. We claim Laura. People, that's what I think drives, again, not all. There's some comic fans being driven away by price. There's some comic fans being driven away by the content, no doubt about it. But there's also some comic fans who are being driven away by, I don't want to be involved in this nonsense war. And this isn't, I don't think this is a fence sitter position. This is hey, I'm still at the party doing what I came to the party for, trying to read comics and enjoy them. That's where I'm at. And this race to the opposites sucks. Anyway, well, that's about it for me for now. So I'm in a little bit of a traffic jam here on the freeway, and I see down off the freeway there is a adult club that's opening up, a strip joint, and on it says it's BYOB. And I'm assuming that means bring your own beer, although it's a strip joint, so, I do have questions. Could be other things. But most likely it's bring your own beer. And I'm kind of I don't I, this is new to me. So a strip joint where you bring your own alcohol is that's odd. I don't know. It feels like that could run into problems. But hey, Texas. Anyway, leave you with that. Thanks for listening.